All right, we are now recording Zoom session for 250, HEAR 250 Real Ear, and we're continuing from our last week's Zoom session, which started the topic of early Real Ear. And just so we can take a running jump at it, let's just take a peek at our PowerPoint, and then we'll focus more on our notes. So here's the PowerPoint that we had. There we go. So when we're looking at good old, where the heck are, oh yeah, here we are. Let's go up, up, up. There we go, up. All right, good old functional gain was the early way of doing things. I mean, this was the way that we normally did Real Ear. Or not Real Ear, that we verified fittings. And we verified fittings according to fitting methods, and to prove that the fitting method was true, or that to prove that you got what the fitting method said you'd get, we take you through 3 general steps in this course. All right, so let's look at the first and second and third step. The first one was functional gain. The second step was insertion gain, seen by yesterday's Real Ear. And today we use neither of those. Today we focus on output purely. And we aren't there yet. We're going to move on to that third way of verifying next week, in next week's Zoom session. This is still Unit 5 on early Real Ear. So you can see in this course we covered early fitting methods, and then today's fitting methods, and then early Real Ear and today's Real Ear. And always look at fitting methods as the predictor. This is what you hope to get. And always look at Real Ear as proving that you did get what the fitting method said you'd get. So one's predicting, fitting methods, the other one is verifying, and that's done either by functional gain, insertion gain, or today's in situ output, Real Ear. So in the old days, we verified with functional gain. You can see the threshold sloping down. You can see that the half gain rule specified, let's improve thresholds by half, because if we do that, then you'll get this. So if we improve the thresholds by half and provide 15 gain, 25, 25, 30 and across in this particular case, then that means if input like regular, average, good old everyday speech comes into the mic of my hearing aid, and my hearing aid provides this kind of gain, it means that the output speech hitting my eardrum will be right here. So that would be the idea behind functional gain. And you see, in the days of functional gain, they didn't have Real Ear. So you had no way to visualize that you would get of really what you were getting. So they did this one. This might be the half gain targets. Now, if it was Berger targets of the old fitting methods, the A's would be slightly different. I think that the A at 2,000 would be up here. The A at 4,000 would be the same here, but I know Berger liked where my cursor is right here. So the letter A's would be slightly different. And if this was a now fitting, then the letter A's would be slightly different from where they are now. And if it was a Libby fitting, then the A's would be only 1/3 above the thresholds, as you can see, right? So functional gain was the old method, and it was behavioral. Then we moved to yesterday's Real Ear, which is this. And looking at the numbers here, they would be exactly the same as I kept saying last week. These numbers here, this is a fictitious example, are exactly what the red target is here. And I did that on purpose to highlight the fact that the fitting methods didn't change, just the method of measurement changed. So we've moved from behavioral, which took a half an hour, to non-behavioral, which took about 20 seconds. I see a hand over there. Is that yours, Tina? Ah,
yes.
Okay. Did you have a question?
Do you still use LDLs, or is it?
They didn't
use LDLs, or do you use UCL, or does it matter?
They didn't use them. They thought of it, and actually, well, I shouldn't say they didn't use them. They used them. Here's what they do. They basically say, oh, what's your use? That's a good question. UCL, let's say pretend it was 100 dB, okay? And they would do that with So if the guy's UCL or loudness discomfort was 100 dB, what they did was they added about 10 or 15 to that. And the reason they did was because your UCL was measured in dBHL, and hearing aids are measured in dBSPL. And so if you take a look, and I'll show you here too, and it's in our PowerPoint because I remember seeing it. So here we go. I'm going to look at this guy. And there we go. I'm just trying to hit escape there. And if you look here, I'll show you why that is the case. Okay, look right there. Okay, the average differences for the speech frequencies. Okay, the average decibel levels for the speech frequencies in dBSPL, the average is about 10 to 15. This is minimal audible field or minimal audible pressure. The average differences across the speech frequencies in dBSPL for us to just barely hear are about 10 to 15. And so when a guy had a UCL of 100, they would add about 10 or 15 to that and make the MPO, the maximum power output, or the OSPL 90 of the hearing aid, they would make that about 115. Okay, so they'd set the maximum power output of the hearing aid about 10 to 15 dB above the guy's UCL, because UCL is measured in dBHL, and hearing aids, of course, are measured in dBSPL. So yes, all the fitting methods did have a way of selecting the maximum power output of the hearing aid based on the listener's UCL. Generally, it was adding about 10 to 15. Good stuff. All right, someone's kicking a football out here, I can hear. Something's falling around. Okay, so now if we go to our PowerPoint here again and we look at what we're doing, we talked last week lots about calibration, and we talked about setting up your system first thing. I talked to you about, let's say, what do we call the pieces and parts of the real ear system, and the speakers, and the probe mic assemblies that hang around your ears. And we talked about the ring that hooks around your ear, and of course the tubing itself. And I told you that the length of the black box was essentially about 29 millimeters or 3 centimeters. And the idea of that, okay, here you can see it here, 29. So if you laid the tube, so the end was here, and you'd put this ring, so the ring was right there. That would ensure that if you placed the tube in the person's ear, okay, and you had the ring sitting right at the tragus, that would ensure then that the length of the tube, because from the tragus to very close to the eardrum, is about 29 or 30 millimeters. So basically the length of the box was used to determine where to put that little ring. And that is on all real ear equipment. So there's two things to be concerned about with all real ear, whether it's yesterday's or today's, and that is where to put that little ring so that the tube, you can be assured then that the end of the tube is close to the tympanic membrane within 5 millimeters. Okay, and again, just to stop sharing for a second, so this isn't abstract. What did I say at MHS? Okay, what's the width of a fingernail? About a centimeter. What's a centimeter? 10 millimeters. So a half a centimeter is 5 millimeters. Split your fingernail in half, and that's about how close you want the end of the tube to be to the eardrum. So that's one thing. And the other thing, of course, is calibration. And calibration, we said last week, is done literally to remove the effects of the tube itself. I'll show you that here. So, okay, here's the reference mic. It's measuring the sound coming out of the speakers of your system. And these are hanging around your ears. So if you wanted the sound to be 60 dBSPL, the reference mic is saying, hey, is it really 60 that's hitting the ear? Is that 60? If I move closer, the sound from the speakers will get softer to maintain 60. If I move further away, the speakers will get louder to maintain 60. That's the job of the reference mic, okay, right here. The probe mic is under this red rubber thing. The probe mic is right under here. And the probe mic is measuring what's happening at the drum. But if you've got a tube that's about 3 inches long, that tube is going to have some effect. Okay, and so what you're doing is you're laying the tube over top of the reference mic, holding that about 18 inches away from the speaker, and let the stimulus come out of the speaker. And what you're doing thereby is getting rid of the effects of that tube, because that's going to have some effect on the sound coming into the probe mic. It's this long, thin tube, and that's what calibration does in the morning. So 2 things before you get started doing real ear. You calibrate, and then placing the tube into the ear canal. Always do otoscopic examination. Always look in to see that things are situated correctly. So if you think it's kind of a lot of work, I'll tell you something. It's a heck of a lot easier than doing this. doing, where am I here? Doing this. Okay, that took about a half an hour. That took an awful lot of time, because you sat there measuring the person's hearing thresholds in a sound field again for the second time. Once under the headphone, and then once in a sound field with the hearing aid on. Oh, by the way, always remember the definition of functional gain. So on a quiz or on a midterm, whichever, functional gain, what is it? The difference between aided and unaided hearing thresholds. Okay? The difference between aided and unaided hearing thresholds. Unaided under headphone, aided in a sound field with a hearing aid on. Okay? When you go to insertion gain is different. Insertion gain is the difference, and you can plug your nose while you say this one. The difference between aided and unaided SPL at the tympanic membrane. Now, they're the same numbers, exactly for any fitting method. The numbers for functional gain will be identical to the numbers for insertion gain. For any particular hearing loss and any particular fitting method being used with that hearing loss, the numbers for now are, or the numbers for Berger will be the same. It's just that one was behavioral and the other one was non-behavioral. Good. So here you go. Functional gain on the left, insertion gain on the right. And look at it, this is a fictitious case. So here's the hearing loss going down. Here's the target aided thresholds for functional gain. You hoped that you'd get these. And these, look, this is the target insertion gain for the same hearing loss for the same fitting method. Okay? The numbers are again identical. It's just the method in which you use to verify is what's different. There you go. A second thing to remember about yesterday's real ear, and please remember this, one target. Okay? All fitting methods offered one target because they were linear. So hearing aids were linear. And linear hearing aids give the same gain for all inputs. So this red line here is the target gain that you wanted for average speech inputs. I will repeat, it is the target gain you wanted for average speech inputs. Just like this is the target gain you wanted for average speech inputs. Same. Everything was based though on average inputs. 65 dB SPL, okay? Or 55 dB HL, either one. You're looking at the gain that's desired for average inputs. And then, of course, for a whisper, that gain won't be enough, so the person will crank it up. And for a yell, that gain will be too much, so the person will turn it down. And that's how you could detect linear hearing aid wearers. They always had their fingers on the volume control. They were always adjusting the volume. You'll notice today, with RIC hearing aids, receiver and canal hearing aids, you don't even see a volume control. And the volume control is gone because the hearing aids are using compression. And compression gives different gain for different inputs automatically. That's why they called it AGC, automatic gain control. And so today's hearing aids rarely have a volume control. Sometimes they do, but you don't see that very often anymore. So this is history is very important to remember, I believe, because otherwise you forget where you came from. So let's just look at now, let's move on to describe how we did yesterday's real ear. Basically, this is what they did. Let's move on down. Whoa, a little bit too far. Here we go. The terms used in yesterday's real ear. Commit these to your mind and memory, okay? Especially the top three. R-E-U-R, R-E-A-R, real ear insertion gain. Okay, real ear unaided response, real ear aided response, real ear insertion gain. And then there's two below it, real ear occluded response, R-E-O-R, and then there's real ear to coupler difference, R-E-C-D. Now, R-E-C-D was rarely used in yesterday's real ear. It's an acronym you're going to run into more next week with today's real ear. And then I write at the bottom, isn't that special? Okay, here we go. Real ear unaided response. The output SPL at each frequency is measured in your open ear canal for a given specific input sound. So if you take a good look at this cup right here, okay, this blue cup, it's a quarter wave resonator. It's a cylinder closed at one end, just like your ear canal is. A cylinder closed at one end, okay? So let's talk about R-E-U-R and what they did. We'll move on here. How to do it. First look in the ear. Set your client a 1/2 meter or 18 inches, 2 feet, something like that, in front of the speaker. Put the probe tube into the ear about 1/4 of an inch from the eardrum, about 5 millimeters, 1/2 centimeter, and choose the input level above room ambient noise level. Now that's step number 4 on this screen. Usually was 55. They chose 55 dB SPL. Why 55? Because it's louder than average room ambient noise. Average room ambient noise is 35 to 40. So you wanted an input to be more than 35 to 40. They chose 55 because it's nice and quiet. It doesn't ever make the sound too loud for somebody. And then they presented what they call a sweep tone or noise. Look what I'm highlighting there. Sweep tones have nothing to do with brooms, okay? You're not mopping up the floor. But they are tones that go do-do-do-do-do, boo-do-do-do-do, and it starts out at 125 and out to about 6,000. Otherwise, it was a noise, like a composite noise that contained all the different frequencies. And then you'd measure the resultant R-E-U-R. Now, interestingly enough, when you're looking at this stuff, come on, advance slide, keep going, we want you to go. Weird little PowerPoint here is being a little bit stubborn. So I'll choose this one here. We'll just go to the next slide and do it this way. R-E-U-R was done to provide a reference for subsequent gain measures. In other words, to help you determine real ear insertion gain, as was required for fitting methods like Nall, R, Libby, Berger. And basically, R-E-U-R represents unaided SPL at or near the tympanic membrane. It can also show abnormalities in the ear canal. So if a person's had mastoidectomy, okay, where the person's had like a really tiny ear canal or a very large ear canal, you're going to see that in the R-E-U-R. So here's a picture of some R-E-U-R actually measured on some particular real ear equipment. Look at the input in red, 55 dB. Okay, 55 dB. Now look at the line here and notice how it too is at 55. So if you follow my cursor, there it is. And all of a sudden, the ear canal resonance begins to take place around 1500 hertz. And you're looking at peaks happening, and then it drops again. R-E-U-R. Here's my drawing of R-E-U-R. Commit this to memory. This is something you've studied in Anatomy 120, and you've seen this in Acoustics 110, and this is something now in real ear measurement. Memorize this. Have these numbers down. The resonance begins at around 1500 hertz. The peak resonance is around 2700 hertz. And the resonance goes all the way out to, and it's slightly past, 4000 hertz. So 1500, 2700, 4000, and look at the decibels of resonance that you're getting. Okay? Look what you're getting. About 20. You're adding about 20. So the way to look at this is, when you look at your previous slide, okay, look at the input at 250 hertz. It's 55 dB. And there's a probe stuck in the guy's ear. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is have it, I'll stop sharing, and then I'll just show it to you this way. If a speaker is here, and a tube is in my ear, and out of the speaker comes a 55 dB tone, and the tone is 250, I'm going to measure in my ear 250 hertz at 55 dB. And now we choose 500 hertz coming out of the speaker at 55 dB. What am I going to measure in my ear? 500 hertz at 55 dB. Take 1000 hertz out of my speaker, 55. What am I measuring in my ear? 55. 2000 hertz at 55 dB. What am I measuring in my ear? 70. 70. I just got 20 dB. Okay, 4000 hertz at 55. What am I measuring here? Around 70 again. So I'm getting that extra resonance. I just want to make sure people really dig this. Okay, good. So, resonance. Here's the complicated way of looking at it, but look at the T for total. Look where the T is, 2700 hertz. Look what the value is, about 20. Okay, on your left. And then look at the number 5 and number 3 in this picture. The number 5 represents the ear canal, resonance just of your ear canal. And number 3 here represents the resonance of your concha bowl. So when you're measuring the resonances of all the pieces and parts of the outer ear, you're getting the T for total. That's how to interpret this picture. And this picture is just a more complicated way of showing my picture here. Okay? So when you're looking at my picture, you're looking at the T in this picture here. And I guess that's what I want you to take home. All right. You all know this question already from 110. Why do we hear some frequencies better than others? Why are equalizer buttons shaped like a smile? And it's largely because of minimal audible field, minimal audible pressure, and it has everything to do with the resonances of your outer ear canal and the resonances of your middle ear. You put those two puppies together and you get MAP and MAF. Okay, the softest it takes to just barely hear all the different frequencies. MAF is with 2 ears in front of a speaker, and MAP is with 1 ear under a headphone. And you'll see that MAP has a little bubble around 2000, 3000 hertz, and that's because with MAP you are plugging up the ear canal, and so when you plug up the ear canal you are closing off the cup that you're seeing on the top right of your screen. Okay, so now you no longer have the quarter wave resonator and you no longer have that outer ear canal resonance. So that's why you lose a little bit of that. You're losing some of this top left here. You're losing some of that total ear canal and concha because you've plugged up the ear with a headphone. But in all essence, this is review, actually. This has not too much to do with real ear, but I think people should make sure you remember this crap from other stuff. So again, this slide is just for your review. You should know this. Coming out of OTC as a graduating HIS, this slide, you should have it down. You should just make sure you have this down. Now, when you take a hearing aid and you plug up an ear with the hearing aid, you've done the same thing as MAP here. We've plugged up the ear. Okay, not with a headphone this time, but now with a hearing aid. So look at the hearing loss sloping down in this picture. And on top, you're showing the outer ear canal resonance. So when you've plugged up the ear with a hearing aid, look at this. You'll not only have the hearing loss, but you also have the loss of that outer ear canal resonance. And I'll be taking you back to this particular concept at the end of today's Zoom session when we talk about real ear occluded response, R-E-O-R. Near the end, you'll be coming right back to this. So here's real ear aided, R-E-A-R. You've kept the tube in place, and you've carefully now inserted the hearing aid on top of the tube. And this is always a bit of a tricky thing. You've got the tube sitting in the guy's ear, and now you're going to take the hearing aid. Oh, here, I got a bag of hearing aids here. Here we go. And you take the hearing aid, I'll use an ITE in this case, okay? So you've got the tube stuck in the guy's ear, and you have to make sure you hold that tube with one hand, keep it in place. The little ring has to be sitting right at the tragus, and now you got to stick the danged hearing aid in the guy's ear. And there you go. You got to make sure that the hearing aid is sitting there and the tube hasn't been moved. And now you're having the guy sit right in front of that speaker a second time now, and the very same sound is coming out of the speaker, 55 dB, and it likely is the sweep tone, or the composite noise at 55, and now what you are measuring is real ear aided response. Same thing, okay? So actually what it says here is REAR is actually an in situ output measure. Let's translate that into English, okay? In situ just means hearing aid in place, in situation, in situ, okay? And you're measuring the output again. REUR, you are measuring the output, okay? REUR, there's the output of the inside your ear canal, unaided, open ear, and you're measuring what's the output happening. And now REAR, you're keeping the client the same distance from the speaker, leave the probe tube in place, be sure to keep the probe tube in the same place as you did with REUR, turn the hearing aid volume control to the listener's preferred level, and use the same input level as you did for REUR. And what will you get? Well, again, you're going to get aided stuff. So read or have a look what it says here. Here's REIG. How do you get it? Subtract REUR from REAR. Okay, the equipment does this for you, of course. And then you just adjust the hearing aid so that REIG best matches target. So here's a picture. Okay, outer ear canal resonance. So here's a speaker delivering sound. And now what do you think is wrong with this picture? Do you see anything wrong visually with this picture? Does anybody see what's wrong with this picture? I'll be quiet for a second and let anybody respond if you see what's wrong with this picture. This I will tell you, the tube is not close enough to the eardrum. Okay, it's too far away. But just, here we go. So here's real ear unaided response. The next slide is hearing aid, real ear aided response. Okay, now you've taken a hearing aid, you stuck it in, its volume is on. So basically you're doing real ear aided on the left. I hate this box on the top. I wish that would go away. Here, go away. Okay. REAR minus REUR equals insertion gain. The difference between aided and unaided SPL at the eardrum. And this is a picture out of my book, chapter 5, out of Compression for Clinicians. Real ear aided response minus real ear unaided response equals real ear insertion gain. Once again, the difference between aided and unaided SPL at the eardrum. So basically this picture here sums it all up. This is the look and the screen of yesterday's real ear. Real ear aided in blue, real ear unaided in yellow, real ear insertion gain as the black dotted line. And what you wanted to see was, so that you can see that you did two measures here. You first did REUR, then you did real ear aided response. And then your equipment automatically calculates the difference between the blue curve and the yellow curve, and it gives you the black dotted line. And that's your insertion gain. Did it match target? And then you just look at it and go, yeah, it's probably not bad. You're a little bit under here at the lows, a little bit over here, and a little bit under here, but basically pretty good, not bad, can't complain. Okay? Contrast that to earlier functional gain. You did the same thing, you just did it in a different way. Non-behavioral, behavioral. Okay? But either way, none of these are done today anymore. But again, if you don't keep your history in mind, you'll be condemned to repeat it. Here's another earlier way, here's another example, okay? REAR, REUR. Notice the inputs in red, identical, okay? Unaided, 55, aided, 55. And they've got aided 2 and 3 here too, because maybe you did it a couple of times by changing things, okay? But note, number 1 and 2. REAR is an in situ measure, hearing aid in place, and both measures here are shown in terms of output in dB SPL. Your input is 55 dB SPL for both of these measures, for both REUR and REAR. And look what you got. Okay, REAR minus REUR, and you can even do this mathematically here. If you took this point right here, right where my cursor is, and you took this and you subtract this, you're going to end up with this. Okay, if I look at 1,000 hertz, if I take this value here, 80, and I minus this value here, 60, I'm going to get this value here, 20. So at any particular frequency, if I look at this value here at 2,000, and I minus this value right here at 2,000, I'm going to get this value here at 2,000. REAR minus REUR equals REIG. Now, what do you think of this fitting? Good, bad, or ugly? What would you do with this one? If you're looking at it, you can see that you're getting too much insertion gain in the mid frequencies and not enough insertion gain at the high frequencies. So you'd need to readjust your hearing aid in order so that your real ear insertion gain would better match your target. So basically, REIG was done to find out whether you have indeed hit your fitting method target with the hearing aid settings you've chosen. You always tried to get as close as you could to the target. This wasn't always possible, but you know what it did? At least it served to quantify what you are getting. And that's the thing about real ear measurement. At least you can see what the client is hearing. So here's real ear occluded response. Now, remember I told you we'd come back to this particular one here. REOR. This is the hearing aid in place, but it's turned off. The hearing aid volume is off, or the battery is out. Okay, so now look at real ear unaided response in yellow, and now look at real ear occluded response in red. If the hearing aid was on, you'd get real ear aided response in blue. But if the hearing aid is off, it's acting like a plug in the ear. So look what you've lost. Okay? And this has everything to do with that earlier picture that I showed you before. And we'll go back to this guy right here. Whoop, right there. Okay? When you plug up an ear with a hearing aid, you've lost that outer ear canal resonance. So not only does the hearing aid have to make up for the hearing loss, but it also has to make up for that loss of outer ear canal resonance. Now, when you're doing real ear occluded response, REOR, okay, here's why it was done. REOR was done to check if your vent of the hearing aid was working. If your vent was closed, then you would have an REOR, real ear occluded response, would sit way below your real ear open unaided ear canal response. In other words, here's your unaided ear canal open, and here's your ear canal closed. Okay, the hearing aid is off. So the difference between your open ear canal or your closed ear canal, or I should say, the difference between the sound in my cup versus the sound now when it's closed. Okay, real ear occluded response. If your vent was working really well, okay, if your vent was working and it was open, then your real ear occluded response would look a lot like your real ear unaided response, because you had a big hole in your hearing aid, and the sound, whether the hearing aid was in place or whether it wasn't, the sound in your ear canal would look almost the same. So the bigger the vent, the more your real ear OR would look like your real ear unaided response. If your vent was very small, your real ear occluded response would look quite different from your real ear unaided response. And that's really the main reason people did REOR. Okay? You're checking things, you're checking the output sound pressure level at each frequency with the hearing aid in place and turned off. Basically, it's REAR with the hearing aid shut off. Basically, it's the difference. You're doing it, or here's a picture of it again from some other company. Okay, real ear aided, real ear unaided, real ear occluded. All right. It was done to find out if your venting was doing a proper job with the hearing aid settings you've chosen. Look for certain frequencies to pass through the vent. These should be seen in the occluded response. Note, REOR might not sit much below REUR if a large vent was used, or if, like one of today's open fit hearing aids was used. Okay? Oh, don't ever buy that book. It's brutal. Anyway, okay, so now let's look at your notes and make sure we've got it all covered. You looked at the PowerPoint slides. Now let's highlight the points that we need to have in mind so that we've got early real ear bagged and done. Okay? So, functional gain, memorize it. Put a star by it. Functional gain. Ooh, am I seeing, Tina, did you have a question? I saw your...
Okay, so if you're using a current hearing aid that is open fit or... Yep. Okay, it's going to be similar to the REUR.
Correct. Yep, correct. Yep, exactly. You've got it. All righty. Share screen. Sound field, okay, involves this functional gain. We're just describing functional gain here. Okay, if you read that, that's highlighted, and put a star by it. Functional gain. Okay, sound field, hearing aid wearing a speaker in a sound field in front of a speaker. Okay, you can't test hearing with a hearing aid on under headphones. It's impossible. Okay, so you have to test it in a sound field. Anyway, and then you're looking at this whole thing, functional gain. Aided thresholds were simply drawn with the letter A on the audiogram. So basically this whole top third of the page is just describing functional gain. So just read that to yourself and make sure you've got it. Okay? General real ear measurement principles. Now, when you leave functional gain behind, it's a quick, non-behavioral, physical way to see if the hearing aid is hitting target. Okay? No one has a 2 cubic centimeter ear canal. Recall, the actual ear canal is less than 2 cc's in volume. So basically, real ear gives you immediate feedback, and it's measuring the hearing aid working in your own real ear, because your own real ear is smaller than a 2 cc coupler, and that's why they call it real ear measurement. Good. Probe tube measurements, in other words, also known as real ear, because it measures the sound in the ear of some particular individual. You should also have an idea as to how long it's been around. So if you are asked this on a quiz or a midterm or a final exam, real ear came out in the late 1980s. And so it's been around for a few decades. It's been around for 3 decades already. It's amazing how many HISs don't use it. It's also amazing how many audiologists aren't using it, because they're sitting there asking the client, how does this sound? How does that sound? And they're operating in the dark. All real ear measurement uses 2 microphones. Put a star by that, your reference mic and your probe mic. A survey taken recently in the US revealed only 60% of audiologists use it. That's slightly over half. Okay? Your fitting software on hearing aid fitting software, look where this is grayed out and highlighted. Your fitting software only gives you a very general idea. It's based on averages. You need to follow up with real ear to finish the job. Let's face it, the manufacturer's job is not to fit their hearing aids. That's our jobs. Their job is to sell us their hearing aid and to get us into the ballpark with their fitting software. But we have to finish the job by doing real ear, because the fitting software that they provide only gives you a general idea based on averages. Here's something else to put a star by. Software might indicate you are right on target, but real ear verification often shows you are well off, way off. Okay? And it's not because the software is wrong, and it's not because the manufacturers are evil. It just means that the manufacturer's software gets you into the ballpark, and it's looking at the average person. Everybody's different. So you have to get, your job is to really actually complete the job of fitting the hearing aid. We should be physiotherapists of the ear, literally. We've got to get the client to gradually accept hearing aid amplification. So you know what's a good idea? Put a star by this too. You know why? Deliberately underfit in the beginning. Don't hit target at the beginning. In your first fitting, shoot under target. Use like a third gain, or provide deliberately less and print it up or save it in the client's file and say, I did this because the client is entering the pool from the shallow end. I don't want to throw him in the deep end. Next week when I see him, I'm going to turn up the gain of the hearing aid a little bit, and so on and so on. Inexperienced hearing aid wearers, experienced hearing aid wearers. The targets of fitting methods are based on experienced hearing aid wearers. And that's just something to realize. And I always say that because a lot of people say, well, I don't use real ear because I don't believe in fitting the targets. Well, that's not the issue. Fitting the targets isn't really the issue. The issue is that right, wrong, or indifferent, you can actually see what the client is hearing. And that's why you do real ear. You might be fitting under target on purpose, but at least you know exactly what you're doing, and you can see what you did because you printed it up. So this is the thing about people that don't do real ear that blows my mind. So here's your pieces and parts. Well, you should also realize this too. Manufacturers tend to roll off the high frequencies with their proprietary fitting methods, because manufacturers also have proprietary fitting methods other than NAL and DSL and all the rest of them. They have their own fitting methods, and their own fitting methods tend to really roll off the high frequencies. So again, here's your pieces and parts. Probe mic, reference mic. I'll keep you, those are the pieces that we covered already. And then your speaker that emits the sound, how far the client should be sitting from the speaker, your real ear probe tube stimuli, okay, usually sweep tones or composite broadband pink noise, and many times today it's speech-like stimuli. You'll actually hear speech spoken. Real ear measurement now. Client is situated in front of the equipment. basically should be facing the speaker straight on, not really from an angle. It's best to have the person face the speaker dead on. Here are your inputs that are often used. Ambient noise level in a room. Okay, actually it's 35 to 40, not 40 to 45. It's 35 to 40. Okay, so all input sounds from probe tube measurement should be at least this. Look at these guys here. I put a star by this one too. You know why? Because the bottom here, this really refers to today's real ear as well. We tend to use 3 different inputs: 55, 65, and 80 or 85. 55, 65, and 80 to 85. Soft, average, and loud inputs. Soft inputs, average inputs, loud inputs, and you should have a good handle as to what those decibel levels are. Okay? Remember to memorize the loudness of average conversational speech. 65 dB SPL, 55 dB HL. Here's real ear equipment that you may commonly run into. Fry has a system. Siemens has a Unity system. GN Resound uses Auricle, A-U-R-I-C-L-E. I think OTC has the Auricle real ear system. Metarex has a system. Audio Scan out of Canada. That's sold all over Missouri and all over the US as well, Audio Scan. So I would write that one in after the word etc. Audio Scan, very common. Real ear measurement, is one better than the other? Hard to say. They all do essentially the same thing. So I would never tout the virtues of one equipment manufacturer over the other. Real ear measurement is done to verify or prove your fittings. Without it, you're sitting there guessing and relying. How does that sound? How does that sound? And here it says, fitting methods predict, real ear measurement verifies. Okay? And then this is just talking about audio scan instrumentation. You don't need to memorize that, but you should have an idea. I would highlight this last sentence, Axiom. Circle that. Axiom is a very popular audio scan model. It's sold all over the world, okay? The Axiom. If you see that word, realize, oh, they're talking a real ear system made by AudioScan. Here it talks about calibrating, what we've covered already. So you calibrate ANSI measurements. You also calibrate real ear, okay? And calibration for real ear is done to get rid of the effects of the tube. And so basically this is just a description of that in terms of notes and not so much in terms of pictures or PowerPoints. Probe tubes. Now let me just mention something about probe tubes. Look where I'm highlighting right here. They're disposable, but they're expensive. You can't reuse them, okay? Never reuse probe tubes. Never stick them in a cleaning solution because you're trying to save money, and then take them out of the cleaning solution and use them on another person the next day. They may have been cleaned, but guess what? The wax that's trapped inside of a tube will end up forming bubbles on the inner sides of the tube, and you're going to ruin it. Also, the wax gets softer. You think you got rid of it, but you didn't. And now it's migrated up to the end of the tube that you're putting on top of your probe mic. And so now when you put the tube on the probe mic, you end up plugging the probe mic with wax. Guess what? You have to buy another whole probe mic assembly box with the reference and the probe mic on it together. Yes?
Previous page said that the probe tube mic breaks down quickly and it's a weak link in the entire system.
It is, yep.
If calibrating of the machine has to take place, if this probe mic is broken and you have to replace it, do you have to then recalibrate the machine every time?
You don't have to recalibrate the machine, but you always should always calibrate the probe tube before you do your real ear measurements for the day, no matter what. Okay?
Different type of calibration then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
gotcha.
probe tube calibration is routine, good old real ear measurement. Just like you calibrate your ANSI test box in the morning, you calibrate your real ear system.
So it's
Okay,
more
to
like
get
a
rid.
biological check.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and the probe mic assembly, the thing that hangs around that's the weak link in your chain. It really is. And if you've plugged up the probe mic because of wax, because of reusing tubing, you got to throw away that whole unit and buy a new one. And that gets expensive. That's several $100s. So here it says, use once and throw them away. They do cost about $1 a piece. They are expensive. And then here, method of probe tube insertion. Well, we talked about the length of the outer ear canal. It's about 35 millimeters in length. So if you make the probe tube 29 millimeters from the tragus, that means the end of the tube will be at least 5 millimeters from your eardrum. Okay, I'll say it again. The average ear canal from your tragus to the eardrum is about 35 millimeters in length. So if you make sure that the ring on your tube is 29 to 30 millimeters away from the tip of the tube, that will ensure that the tip of the tube is 5 millimeters from your eardrum. Okay? Being closer than 5 millimeters to your eardrum doesn't improve things much, but being further away from it does. And it really cuts off your high frequencies, big time. So much so that I think I've even got a picture of it up here. Okay? Huge. This is the effect of removing the probe tube, of keeping it too far away from the eardrum. You can see centimeters from the drum. The further the tip of the tube is from the eardrum, look at your loss of high frequencies in your real ear unaided response. Your REUR will not look very much like an REUR. Okay, you're really going to lose these highs if the tip of the tube is not inserted nice and closely to the drum. And then the rest of this just goes, here's your terms, REUR, REAR. Okay, all of this is just listing. So the notes here are just giving you the verbal stuff that we've covered, REIG, real ear occluded response. Okay, and now read with me what we see in italics here. Let's highlight this and read it together. Because here's what happened that changed old real ear into today's real ear. So here goes. Most older prescriptive hearing aid fitting methods, like Nal, Libby, Pogo, Berger, they compare real ear insertion gain to their gain targets to determine if a hearing aid is doing what it should. The closer REIG was to the target gain, the better the hearing aid fitting, ... Yep, been there, got the t-shirt. Now I'm repeating myself. So comes the next thing. DSL. Look what I've highlighted there. DSL took a dim view of insertion gain. Richard Seewald, Seewald, in London, Ontario, Canada, at Western University in Ontario, Canada. Sorry, it came from that pink country north of you, okay? That changed real ear. He looked at it and said, why are you looking at REIG? Because the targets provided by those older fitting methods are based on hearing thresholds. And when you use those, when you tested hearing and you got your hearing thresholds, you plugged up the ear. When you used a headphone to get your hearing thresholds, you plugged up the ear. When you used an insert headphone and tested hearing, you plugged up the ear. So what you did was you put the truck in reverse and you backed over top of the REUR. You killed it. You plugged it up. So if you plug up an outer ear canal, which is a quarter wave resonator, your REUR is gone. So, and your REIG was calculated by subtracting real ear unaided response from real ear aided response. But if you've killed off REUR during your hearing test, then why the Sam Hill are you using REUR in your hearing aid test? That's exactly what he said. If you REUR, he said, looking at that is stupid. It may exist, but when you did your hearing test, you killed it off in the first place. So if you didn't use it in your hearing test, why are you using it in your hearing aid test? So he said, stupid, weird, odd. The only reason you should ever use REUR is if you did the hearing test in a sound field. If you did your hearing test in front of a speaker. So the guys, now you really are using your real ear unaided response because your ear canals are open. But if you didn't do your hearing test in a sound field, what the hell are you doing? So this paragraph right here in your notes is italicized for a reason. Okay? Right here. This is very important because this is what translated yesterday's real ear into today's real ear. All right. So I'll highlight the top of this page here. If REIG is used to match to some gain target proposed by some old fitting method, it would stand to reason that the unaided threshold should have been obtained in a sound field, because only then are you truly incorporating one's REUR. An additional problem with real ear insertion gain, he said, is that most of these old fitting methods, such as NAL-R, assume linear hearing aids, which give the same gain for all inputs. And today's hearing aids are compression. And compression gives different gain for different inputs. So therefore, we use 3 different inputs. And that's why this is italicized right here. Today's real ear, we don't do REUR, we threw it out. And secondly, in today's real ear, we use 3 different inputs because hearing aids today use compression. So that completes our discussion on yesterday's real ear. Next week, our Zoom session will begin coverage of how we do real ear today. So, but if you don't know what happened yesterday, you don't know why you're doing what you did today. But it's good always to take history. I am a big believer in history. So now we are at 2018, and we're going to look at what we do now every day in real ear and how much easier it is than yesterday's real ear, and also what a way better counseling tool it is, because you can explain to the husband or caregiver or child or whomever the benefits of the hearing aid way better on today's real ear than you could on yesterday's real ear. So with that, I'll take my little bag of hearing aids here, and I'll put them in the drawer here, and I'm going to go for a coffee. Actually, I've got one here, but I'm going to go out and do a bit of exercise. I've been sitting in front of this computer too long. So, any questions, Tina? Do you have any more questions that I can try and answer? Otherwise, we're good to go, all right? Cool. Thank you, as usual, for showing up. It's always great when someone's there. So it's always nice to see you there with the bright windows behind out there in good old Springfield, Missouri. Okay, good stuff, Tina. See you next week, okay?
All right. Bye-bye.
I'll stop recording here.